Model that I was showing to one of our clients today in a coaching call. And so let me kind of set the stage so you can know if this sounds at all familiar for you as you are ramping up and scaling up your startup. So the model that I want to describe for you is what I call the right fit forward model, right fit forward. And so here's the scenario that happens oftentimes with B2B enterprise startups. This happened with me with two of the three startups where I was the first head of sales. And I see it very frequently with startups that are coming out of that very early stage where they have their first few customers. And there's really starting to get some momentum and some traction around those future customers as they start to ramp up and, of course, scale up on their sales. And so what often happens, if you think about it, you go out and you build the first version of your product, and then you get it to the point where, of course, it's not done. It's never done, and it's definitely not perfect. But it's sellable. You got to go out and start to sell this thing that you built, and you're trying to get that first customer. You're trying to get the second customer. In that true startup stage, getting out of the garage. We think of it as like the true startup mode, and you're really trying to get your first, call it 10 paying customers in that B2B enterprise space. And what happens oftentimes, like you go out there, as much as you have a target market segment that you think is going to be the ideal customer, you've got a hypothesis around who you're going to be able to sell to and the companies that will be the best fit for you. What ends up happening, frankly speaking, is like you'll take anyone. Like you want to get somebody who's willing to pay you money to use your product. You're looking for somebody who has the problem that you solve, and even if it's not the problem that you think you solve, you've got a prospect in front of you that you found through an investor or through an introduction or through network, or somehow they found you via inbound, and you're like, great, I've got somebody who's willing to pay me money. This is awesome, because you're trying to cross that penny gap. You're trying to get to a place way down the road where you can get product market fit. But before you get product market fit, you just got to get product problem fit. You got to prove that, hey, I built this product and it solves a problem for somebody. So much so that they're willing to pay me money, that there's this exchange in value, right? And so what ends up happening for those first couple of customers, those first 10, and this is where the right fit forward model starts to come in, is that oftentimes what you'll find is that maybe your first customer is a very large Fortune 500, right? They come in somehow through inbound, or they found you at a conference and you had a great conversation. You were dealing with an innovator, an early adopter, somebody who could really champion your product through, and they get what you're doing, and you get a contract with a big Fortune 500. You're like, this is amazing. This is awesome, right? And then maybe the second customer that you get is almost the polar opposite. It's like a small business. Maybe it's a restaurant or a dry cleaning operation with multiple chains in the local area. And somehow they found your software, and they found you on a Facebook group or something like that. And they found out about your software, and they asked for the demo. You show them the demo. They're like, hey, I think this could help us. And so now you got a Fortune 500 and you've got a small business as your first two customers. Then maybe customer number 3 and 4 and 5 are somewhere in between, but they're in different market segments. Maybe one is a hospital, a second one is a bank, and maybe a third one is some kind of government, quasi-government agency or an NGO. And you realize, like, man, like these first 5 customers are kind of like, first of all, this is awesome, right? Because now we can sell to a lot of different people. But you also know, like, this is like not great going forward, because you got to focus somehow, right? And so you got customer 1 is big, huge customer. Customer 2 is really small, and then 3 and 4 and 5 are somewhere in between across different verticals. And so you continue to move forward, and through this first 5 customers, you realize, like, customers 6, 7, and 8, again, through the strategies that you're following with your go-to-market model, or because of the conferences you're going to, or because of inbound, or because of some outbound work you're doing, or whatever the reason is, you realize, like, okay, our next customers 6 and 7 and 8, they're actually a lot like customers 3, 4, and 5, and they're very unlike customers 1 and customer 2. And you go, okay, well, maybe we're kind of like on to something here. And you're moving forward, and this is over a course of this could be over the course of 12 months, right? From the time, if you're selling B2B enterprise, right, it could take you 12 months to get those first 10 customers or longer, right? And so this could be a 12-month process just to get the first 5, and then another 6 or 7-month process to get the next 3 after that, right? It's going a little faster, but it's still pretty slow, because you're supporting those current customers. The product roadmap is slower than you want. You're still trying to get your wheels under you, trying to figure out how to support and find those new customers. And so with customer 6, 7, and 8, you realize like, okay, these are actually more like the right fit customers. And as you are moving forward and selling to those customers, you're also continuing to sort of go back and, of course, support the previous customers. And what you may start to find, or maybe what you have found in your startup, is that you go like, customer number one, even though they're a Fortune 500, they want us to do all kinds of customizations that we really don't want to do. They're not on the product roadmap at all. Or maybe they want us to sign some kind of like outrageous non-compete. Or maybe they really kind of want us more like they treat us more like a consulting firm and we're technology-enabled consulting, but they're not really embedding our product into their standard workflow. And you start to realize like they're actually kind of a pain in the neck, even though they're giving us money. That's not the ideal customer going forward. And the same with the small business. Maybe the small business, you realize like they're only paying us like $200 a month, and now with customers 6 and 7 and 8, we're charging 2,000. Maybe you just sent out a proposal for 3,000, and the customer seems to be just fine with that in their budget. And you're realizing like the small customer has lots of feature requests. They're hard to support. They're kind of a pain in the neck overall. And you realize like, man, I don't really want more of those customers. And so instead, what you want is more customers like 6, 7, and 8, and 3, and 4, and 5. And so you begin again to narrow in even more, and that's where you start to get zeroed in and dialed in on that ideal customer profile. Like whatever that segment is or that customer type is, you're like, we're getting really good at identifying that problem. We know who the stakeholders are. We know who the decision makers are. Our value proposition is really clear. Maybe there's not a lot of other good solutions on the marketplace. Maybe there's something in that industry which is a forcing function that's requiring them to change. Maybe it's a compliance change or regulatory change or a customer privacy issue change, and we're like perfectly positioned to just zone in on that market. And that market itself could get us to not just $1 million in revenue, but the 3 and maybe even $10 million in revenue in the next 3 years, right? And so you start to dial in at customers 10, and 11, and 12, and this becomes your ideal customer profile and your target market. But again, meanwhile, you're 18 months down the road after bringing on customers 1 and 2, and you're still dealing with the legacy effects of that. Maybe it's some bespoke code that you wrote or some custom integrations that you have to support. And there's some QA testing that has to happen every single week, every time your engineers check in any kind of significant code into the platform. Or the small customers just eating up a lot of your customer support time, like spending time on the phone with them. And so now you have this decision to make, right? And sometimes you might even be feeling to yourself like, man, I almost wish they don't renew. I almost wish I could fire those customers. And this is critical. This is a good sign. This is totally normal for you, because when you started off, as much as you had that hypothesis around your perfect customer and who your target market was going to be, you needed money and you needed to kind of test where the market really was going to be for your product, who was willing to pay you money, who had the problem that you think that you solve. But now 18 months down the road, you've got this decision to make. And I guess in a lot of ways you might feel badly. Like, I don't want to give up those legacy clients. It might look bad on our churn. We only have 11 customers. If we get rid of 2 of them and we're going to go out for a capital raise, what am I going to tell my investors now? Because we have close to 20% churn rate. And so I think what's really important as a founder of a company is that you have to think about who is the right fit forward customer. And so if you have customers that are legacy customers or past customers before you made a pivot or before you made some significant learnings about who you're really going to be focusing on, then I think it's important to go back and if those are not customers that you would want to support today, imagine that customer number 1 came into your funnel today and they were all the way up here. Would you want to sell to them? Would you sell to them at all? Would they be a good fit for you? And if the answer is no, then it's okay for you to ignore them, of course, if they're a new lead, but then also go back to those older customers. And really the option for you, I think there's a couple options. One is that you go back and you just have a very candid conversation. You say, look, first of all, I want to let you know we love you and we appreciate you, and we always appreciate the fact that you're one of our first customers. We want to love you and support you and help your business as much as possible. Over the last 18 months, here's where the product has changed. This is where the company has changed. This is where our support schedule has changed, and this is where our pricing has changed. And so, if you're able to fit into this model that we're pursuing going forward, then we would love to continue supporting you as a customer. But if not, then we will do everything possible to help you find the next solution to help you continue solving this problem that you have. Because as we continue to move forward and we continue to serve the other customers and we continue to expand, our fear is that we're going to be in a situation where we're just not able to support you at all. Right now we can support you, but it's not perfect for both of us, and it's probably going to get farther and farther apart as we go. So if you're able to catch up to us, or you're able to fit into where the product is going and how we're supporting them and the pricing and everything else that we're doing, then awesome. And if not, we're going to help to find you a new solution. And so you've got to make that decision. You've got to think about that as the right fit forward, and just know this evolution of your customer and your focus is completely normal. I've had this, like I said, at 2 different startups. I remember at Blend, our very first 2 customers, one was Freddie Mac, which is one of the biggest companies, mortgage companies in the world, mortgage investors in the world. And one of our other second companies was a very small local lender, online lender, that was paying us $100 a month, or not even $100 a month. They gave us $100 in earnest money for that first contract, as opposed to the hundreds of thousands of dollars for Freddie Mac. Those are our first 2 customers at Blend. Now, over time, we narrowed in more working with lenders using the workflows that we had built, and we realized, okay, these 2 are not our ideal customer, and we're not able to support them in the way that they need to be supported. And so in both cases, they chose not to renew, and we were actually quite relieved about that, even though it meant saying goodbye to a lot of cash coming in from Freddie Mac. And even though it was, in a way hurtful, not on a personal level, but it was a struggle to have to tell the smaller lender, from the relationship standpoint, that we're just not able to help you. But it worked out better for everyone involved. So just keep this model in mind. If you feel like you're getting the inkling that those older customers, maybe we can't support them anymore, chances are maybe you can't. You probably can't. Because as you're learning and you're growing and the product is growing and you're evolving, you've got to think about the right fit forward customers, not those first customers that may be the wrong fit customers for you going forward. So, all right, that's it. That's my little 10-minute teach, my lesson for the day. If you think this would be helpful if it was helpful to you, or you think it would be helpful to another startup founder that's in that early stage, growing out of those first 10 customers, might be going with this, I would really appreciate if you could just like or comment or share this with just one other founder. I want to get this message out to as many people as possible, because I know it's a difficult conundrum to deal with, and it's a struggle because you have the emotional attachment to those early customers, and you also have the responsibility to your company to keep growing in the most healthy way possible. So if you could like or share this with one other founder, that'd be great. All right, that's it for now. Scott Simbucci.